for raising awareness. But really what I found is through legislation and working with our elected leaders and our advocate organizations, letting them know what we need, that we can make the greatest change. Because look, I came to this injury, I lived 30 years as a leg walker. I came to this injury with a lot of internalized ableism. No one is born knowing the barriers that we have or that we face when we go through life. But believe me when I say you have a team here of electeds and organizations that want to facilitate and support our success, that want to help us create greater equity. And so that's going to lead me to thanking the organizations that are here and the people that are here, starting with CCDC. Everyone give them a round of applause. They provided lunch. Paralyzed Veterans of America National is joining us via Zoom. The National Federation for the Blind, Adaptive Adventures, So Kids Can Move, Atlantis Community, Center for People with Disabilities, the DIA team at the airport, the Gov's office, TACT. We're joined by so many, and I would be remiss if I didn't call the fact that our speaker designate, Julie McLachlan, is here joining us in the back. So everybody, please. As well as several elected. So if you're elected, if you want to raise your hand or stand now so that people can know who you are. Folks, they want your voice here. They want to see you here. They want to know how they can make life more accessible and equitable for us. So this is the purpose. We're not here to talk at you. We're here to empower your voice and to hear your story. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Julie from CCDC. She's going to get us kicked off by doing a moment of silence for a champion that we actually lost recently, and then go into giving kind of the state of the nation for those of us who live with a disability. So Julie.
Thank you, Representative. Yeah, for people who don't know, we lost an amazing hero in our community last Saturday, Scott LaBarre, who people who have been around this building know very, very well, was a leader in the National Federation of the Blind, the Colorado Center for the Blind, as well as the American Bar Association. He also led a national coalition of blind lawyers. He had really outsized influence in this building. A couple bills that are really important was a bill, I believe in, I'm horrible with years, I think it was 2018, that he led along with Carrie Lucas, who is also no longer with us, to prohibit county departments of human services from taking away our children because of their preconceived biases and prejudices against parents with disabilities. That was a bill that's really meaningful for all of us with disabilities, but particularly all of us who are parents. I always say when my kids were little, they weren't afraid of the boogeyman, they were afraid of social services because they had two disabled moms. He also was very instrumental, along with Curtis Chong, who was here, in getting voting rights access for people who are blind. And now, thanks to those efforts on a couple different bills, people who are blind or print disabled in any way can vote completely independently. They can vote safely, securely, and totally electronically. That's huge. He was instrumental, of course, in our bill that put the ADA, Title II of the ADA in state law to make sure that state and local governments are accessible and that we can enforce that in Colorado. And we were the first state in the nation in that law to require digital access, which is sad that that's just happening. Again, the ADA has been around 30 years. Scott was someone who showed up, even though he was a very busy lawyer with national and international work that he was doing. He would show up. He would show up at political fundraisers for the people that supported us. He'd show up at other people's events. He made the Colorado blindness community very welcoming and inclusive for all of us. So it's a huge loss that we all feel. And what Scott would want is for people to not just keep fighting, but to fight harder, stronger, and longer. So if we could have a moment of silence honoring Scott and his work. Thank you, everyone. His work will live on, inside and outside of this building. Representative Ortiz wanted me to do a quick overview of kind of the state of people with disabilities in Colorado. And about Scott, there will be a memorial in both the House and the Senate, as well as a proclamation coming out. So could you go to the next? Okay. Now the next one. So, we always talk about, so who has disabilities and what kind of disabilities do people have? The best available, there's information that's both from the Center for Disease Control and the American Community Survey. Well, I've taken stuff from the American Community Survey, not because one's better, just because that's the one that's connected with the census. So 10.5% of Coloradans have a disability at any one time. People always say, well, I always hear the number 25%. That's who might have a disability in their lifetime. But 10.5% of us, of all ages, all races, all ethnicities, have a disability. You know, there are different types of disabilities. What's important is, but if you look at age, 30.3% of Coloradans over 65 have a disability. So that number goes up a lot. If you look at veterans, 35.3% of non-institutionalized disabled veterans have a service-connected disability. If you look at disability prevalence by race, the numbers look very different. And I think the number that's, to me, most glaring is Native American, Native Alaskan. And that is almost 25% of that population has a disability. So when you look at the 10%, that is not the same for all of us. And when we look at any kind of disability demographic, you're going to hear that refrain. It's not the same for all of us, where particular groups, particularly Native Americans, Native Alaskans, and Black and African Americans have much higher percentages of disability and have worse outcomes. And that's a result purely of systemic racism, not just today, but in the past. So any disability policy needs to be addressing also systemic racism. If you could go to the next slide, please. Again, that's just a visual. When we look at employment, the way out of poverty is through employment. Again, you're going to see, you know, similar numbers, but we also want to be clear that all of the entire disability community has abysmal employment rates, because it's, again, the average rate is under 50%, and only about 30% of us have full-time, full-year jobs. That's totally unacceptable. If the lines where there's a blue and an orange, and there is an accessible online version of this that will be sent out, but the orange is full-time, full-year, and the blue is employed at all, and that could just be a temporary job for a couple months over the year. And so it says that people with hearing disabilities have the highest rate of employment. What's important is that that is anyone with a hearing loss. So I think if you looked at culturally deaf people, it would be way, way, way lower. Other than that, the people with the lowest rate of employment are people with physical disabilities who need help with activities of daily living. That is the group that is most burdened by lack of employment. That's also a group, if you look at where there have been employment supports, that has actually gotten no employment supports. None of our legislative efforts have focused on that group. So that's just something to think about. If you can go to the next slide, please. The annual earnings of people with disabilities is also something that is hugely problematic. And what's really problematic is people that go through DVR have the lowest rate of earnings, which again should be concerning. Their earnings are well below self-sufficiency and almost at poverty. And non-disabled people, of course, earn way more than we do. Again, you'll see people with physical disabilities, independent living disabilities, which is often going to be mental health and brain injury, and self-care have the lowest earnings. And if we look at education, 40% of us have high school or less, and only 22% of us have a BA or higher. If 20.6% of us are living in poverty, with 12.8% of us on SSI and almost 40% of us on Medicaid. If we look at Medicaid clients, one very positive statistic is we're up to over 17,000 on the Medicaid buy-in for working adults with disabilities. That is something to celebrate. But we have about 65,000 adults with disabilities, 18 to 59, and about almost 80,000 over 60. And that's just regular Medicaid. That's not necessarily waiver. For waiver services, we have almost 50,000 people in waivers. Now, there is some overlap. If we look at statewide costs for Medicaid disabled clients, surprise, surprise, care in institutions is the highest cost at $42,000. HCBS for outside of the developmental disability system is the cheapest at about $15,000. Now that's an average. That's not going to be for every person. Aid to the needy disabled was down to only 3,238 people last year. A little concerning why that's so low. All you have to do is look outside, walk a block in any direction, and you'll see that there are thousands of people. Most people who are quote unquote chronically homeless have disabilities. So there's a disconnect there. And even though there are 2 jobs for every unemployed person and 10.6% of our population are actively seeking work, there were only less than 2,000 successful closures last year with DVR, although 12,000 people were served in 2021. But the average salary at closing is only $26,000 a year, or $17.53 an hour at 28 hours a week, compared to an average hourly wage of $34.21 for other Coloradans who work 33.2 hours a week. So I know I just threw a lot at you. That will be in the handout, but we wanted to just set the stage for what is it that we are up against. So I will turn back the floor to Representative Ortiz.
All right, so fell out of the sky and lived, bumped my head really hard. For those of you that aren't good with numbers, that don't memorize things well, the bottom line is I think we all understand that when it comes to outcomes, the disabled community is facing a lot when it comes to employment, when it comes to education, when it comes to housing. And this is going to kind of be the focus of what the bills that we're bringing forward this session and in the future are going to be. So at this time, I would love to bring forward the Paralyzed Veterans of America advocate, lobbyist. She's done amazing work for as long as I've known her. When I was new as a new elected, when it came to working on disability rights, I can't tell you how many times I leaned on her and depended on her. So she's going to join us online. It's going to be Heather Ansley, and she's going to be joining us with Paralyzed Veterans of America.
Well, thank you, and good afternoon. Appreciate the opportunity to join you virtually. Agree that that is something that is good, that has come out of our new world, as we do now understand that people can be able to join from anywhere, which does open up the world to everyone. So I appreciate the opportunity that Representative Ortiz has given us to be able to talk about some of the issues that we work on behalf of people with disabilities. So Paralyzed Veterans of America is a national veteran service organization. We've been around for over 76 years now, and our priorities focus not only on veterans, but since our founding, we've understood that the civil rights of our members as people with disabilities was just as important as their ability to get the benefits and services that they need from the Department of Veterans Affairs. What we would like to talk a little bit about today is just a couple of the disability-related issues that we see on the horizon at the federal level in 2023. Understanding that we are coming to a close of the 117th Congress, They are busily trying right now to get the budget over the finish line, and there's actually several veterans bills that we're hoping to get over the finish line as well. Anything that did not pass, however, will need to be reintroduced when we start the 118th Congress in January. Representative Ortiz mentioned access to air travel as something that is still a huge issue for people with disabilities. And that is something that PVA has been focused on trying to improve for decades. And the opportunity we will have is this year in 2023, so in the coming year, the reauthorization of the Federal Aviation Administration, or the FAA, is set to take place by September 30 of 2023. And so that means that we're going to have action in Congress, whether it's to pass a new authorization or to extend the current authorization. They'll have to do something come September. And we're hopeful that we're going to see action on a new reauthorization. And we understand that it is the goal of the committees to be able to have a disability title specific to passengers with disabilities like they did in 2018. There was a hearing in the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee in mid-November where I had the opportunity to testify that was solely on the needs of passengers with disabilities. And we've really been laying the groundwork to include lots of provisions, one of which is the Air Carrier Access Amendments Act, which would require standards for aircraft, just like we have for for buses and trains and other modes of transportation, but we don't have for airlines. So that's something we're working on, plus enforcement. Enforcement is, the way right now that you can get enforcement is filing a complaint with DOT, the Department of Transportation, or filing a complaint with the airline. There is no opportunity to go to the courts under the federal law, and the enforcement is rather anemic. And all of these options we feel like need to be addressed. I also want to point out that the Department of Transportation has several rulemakings that are slated to come out next year, including one that's supposed to come out in February. We'll see if they make the timeline, that is focused on the issues that impact wheelchair users in particular, looking at damaged wheelchairs and also the training or lack thereof that those who are physically moving and lifting passengers who must use wheelchairs and aisle chairs to get on and off the aircraft. You may recall that about a year ago, we lost a disability advocate in Garcia Figueroa, who died following injuries that she suffered when her wheelchair was destroyed after she was coming back from Washington to advocate for home and community-based services. And all of this really ignited a groundswell that Department of Transportation had a day-long meeting back in March of this year to really talk about those particular issues. And we're going to see a proposed rule coming out early next year. We're also supposed to see a final rule come out on access to lavatories. As you probably know, right now, there is no lavatory access on single aisle aircraft for people who need an assistant in the restroom, for people who use wheelchairs, for people who maybe want to take their service animal in. The restrooms are terribly small, even for the typical passenger. And this would address that issue finally, although it is going to be a long timeline. That's all to say that there is a lot happening in the aviation space, and I do encourage you to continue to follow these efforts throughout the year and weigh in as you can, including letting your legislators there in Colorado know that you want them to support efforts at the federal level to improve access to air travel. We also are looking at the Americans with Disabilities Act. As Representative Ortiz mentioned, the ADA will be 33 next year. And unfortunately, although lots of progress has been made, there is still lots of progress to be made. And one of those areas is to make sure that more businesses comply. We've supported legislation that would increase the tax incentives that are available to help businesses make needed changes to their places of accommodation, efforts to have Department of Justice consider more of those complaints that people file, including increasing access to mediation, We know that right now, unfortunately, a lot of complaints that are filed end up getting kicked back, saying basically they don't have the time to take a look at it. And we don't think that that's a good enough solution. So we are working to try to figure out how we can better improve access. And certainly at the state level, states that have their own versions of the ADA are sometimes a better option, a faster option to try to get access taken care of. We're also looking for regulatory action. There's a lot of things that can be done administratively. And there are things that the Department of Justice needs to do, for instance, related to regulations around hotel bed height, which is something we hear about constantly, even in the accessible room, people can't access the bed. Also, movable medical equipment. So things like having access to a variety of issues that people have to face, when they're trying to access medical care in this country. So I do want to thank everyone today for the opportunity just to go over a few of those issues and to say how pleased we are to be able to support this effort. And it's exciting to see the work that's happening in Colorado. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Heather. And I really want to thank her because there are things that I can do as a state representative, and that is working with DIA, who have shown themselves to be great partners in ways to make the airport more accessible. But I can't reach out and touch the airlines. They're out of my jurisdiction. So it's really important that we foster relationships like those with TVAs and others on the national level. So up next, we're going to start getting into our bills that we're going to be working on the state level. And I'm going to introduce Andrew Montoya, who's a lawyer with CCDC. And he's going to talk about the CADA fix bill that we're bringing forward. So, Andrew.
Thank you very much, Representative Ortiz. And thank you, everyone, for being here today to discuss disability rights. I think right now we've got a terrific opportunity to really make some good changes for people with disabilities in Colorado. And I look forward to working with you all in accomplishing that goal. I'm here today to talk about what we've lovingly dubbed the CADA fix bill. CADA, of course, being the Colorado Anti-Discrimination Act. Essentially, what this bill seeks to do is to put the public accommodation prohibition on disability discrimination into Section 802, along with the existing public entity disability discrimination prohibition. So essentially putting those two ADA-like provisions in the same section of the law. We're also looking to correct some confusion that arose following the 2014 amendments to the CADA. In 2014, the CADA was amended to expand protections for people with disabilities, most notably service dog users and trainers of service animals. Well, part of those amendments inserted a phrase into Section 602 that said for violations, you look to Section 802 for the remedies. Unfortunately, as a result of that change, some courts have had some confusion and are now ignoring the next section in 602 that says that people with disabilities have a choice between filing a complaint with the Colorado Commission, the CCRD, or filing a private lawsuit. Prior to those amendments, courts had been on board with people with disabilities having that option. Following those amendments, there's been a series of cases that have said that people with disabilities now have to exhaust administrative remedies. So we're simply seeking to restore the original, the original legislative intent that people with disabilities not be required to exhaust administrative remedies and having the option. And then finally, we're seeking to clean up some of the language. Typically, the way that a civil rights statute reads is you've got the prohibition on discrimination up top, and then you prohibit retaliating against the person for standing up for their rights. As the CADA currently reads in Section 802, it's kind of flip-flopped. You've got the retaliation provision preceding the non-discrimination provision, so we just want to swap those around. And we also want to clarify with respect to the remedies that are available that a person with a disability that has been subject to a violation of the law is entitled to a court order as well as one of the monetary damages. One of the monetary remedies, either actual damages or the statutory fine. As it currently reads, a court could look at that and say, well, you're entitled to any one of the three remedies. So we simply want to clear up that a person is entitled to the order to fix the problem as well as the potential for one of those monetary remedies. So far, we at CCDC have worked with Disability Law Colorado and ARC of Colorado on this bill, and we look forward to gaining the rest of your support. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Andrew. All right, so I'm up next. I'm going to talk about three of the disability rights bills that I'm going to be bringing forward. I'm going to keep it brief. I'm going to keep it quick. We're going to have Q&A at the end, so take notes if you have any questions. So the first one up is going to be the housing accessibility bill. I think many of us have had that experience in trying to move into a new apartment, condo, townhome, or even back into our own homes and realized how inaccessible the world was. So basically what this is going to do is mandate, whether it's a townhome, whether it's condos, apartments, that new construction moving forward make 15% of their units accessible. And we're working on what that specifically means. Kind of just got through a tough election, so the details are still being hammered out. Please reach out to my offices, and we will definitely work with you on that. We also want to work, if an apartment complex is going through major renovations, then we want to make sure that in those renovations built in, that 10% of those units are going to become accessible. There's 10 to 15% of us that live with a disability, but if you include those that are over 65, that also have mobility issues, this is also about them. We have a very expensive and overstretched living facility and nursing home system. And so we want to make sure we're not just creating an accessible environment for those of us who live with a disability, but also giving our senior citizens an alternative when they've raised their family and they're looking to downsize, that they can move into a safe space. If they depend on home health care, we're also looking to support home health care workers, because if you have an accessible environment that you're living in, it is safer work environment for them. So this is why this is going to be one of my top priorities. Again, if you want to work on specifics with me, reach out to my offices. Outdoor accessibility bills. So this comes from my own lived experience. Was a runner before I got hurt. Obviously, I'm not doing that anymore. But I'll tell you what I do, where I do get my kicks from. It's downhill skiing. I think it's one of the few adaptive sports where we're on equal footing with any leg walker out there. Gravity does all the work. We just have to make our turns, right? But what I'm noticing is that ski resorts are replacing their lifts, prioritizing able-bodied people's comfort over our basic access. We are no longer being able to load and unload off of ski lifts independently for people's comfort. That's stopping now. So that bill is going to mandate, put a mandatory freeze on all replacement of ski lifts by those that are not accessible for us when it comes to independently loading and unloading. It's going to create a task force of adaptive athletes, adaptive sports programs, creators of adaptive equipment, which by the way go for like $7,000, $8,000 a pop. And those are housed here in Colorado. So another economic engine creating adaptive equipment for people across the state and around the world, but really making sure we're bringing a task force that's representative to work on this issue, to inform ski resorts that this is something that they're expected to do. Their resorts exist on federal lands. ADA is a law. You're gonna respect it. You're gonna adhere to it. But this isn't just about skiing. This is also about trailheads in our state, county, city, national parks. I can't tell you how many times I've seen a peer post on social media that they can't access a trail because they have this weird, and I don't know why they have it, but this weird maze to go into it. Maybe it's to prevent animals from getting in and out, not sure. But we're going to create a separate task force for that to make sure that the Department of Parks and Wildlife here understands what accessibility means for us and make sure that they're working with us to make our outdoor spaces accessible. The last one I want to mention is access to participate in state and local government. So, you know, I was elected in 2020, probably the only legislator here that by nature of this building could not do their job until they made renovations. They made a section of the floor accessible for me, so I really appreciate the work they did on that. And then so that I could chair the committee of the whole, my colleagues really worked really hard to make sure that we installed a lift to go to the speaker's dais. And I'm so grateful, and it's amazing to have those kind of allies. But folks, this building is not accessible. This is a people's house. That needs to end. So we're looking on creating some mandates around accessibility. If it's a place where the public is to be heard, whether we're talking about city, state, county, school boards, then those places need to be accessible, period. And not just for people coming in, but for elected leaders. Can you imagine how much you would lose your mind if there was a no women allowed sign on the House floor? Essentially, when we encounter stairs or when we encounter barriers, that is what is being said to us. That needs to end. So we're moving forward to end that. Another part of that is to make sure the online option is available. And this is not just the right thing to do for people with disabilities, but folks, it's the right thing to do for working families. Every person, regardless of who they are, deserves to participate in our government and have their voice heard. So that's those three bills in a nutshell. If you want to participate, hammer out details, want to find out more, please work with my offices on that. And with that, I'm going to introduce Sam Jarris, who's going to discuss adding disabled community to the 1192 Commission. Sam.
All right, so I'm going to, my voice carries really easily, so instead of bending down here and reading everything off, which looks awkward, no, it's fine. Okay. You're going to be using it later, and I don't want to bother moving it.
For the people online, though, they can't.
Oh, my apologies. Okay, so it's wonderful to see so many faces that I already know in this audience. Diversity, equity, and inclusion is not entirely collaborative unless all voices contribute to the conversation. Though the disability community is often left out, meaningful presentations like right here create opportunities for reflection and growth. Same can be said throughout adolescence years in primary and secondary education. In either case, reflection of past actions of others inform how we treat one another and how we grow. Building upon a similar framework to colleagues HB 19-1192 and my work with 1150, improving access for students with disabilities in higher education that I did with Rep. Ortiz last session, our bill would set standards in primary and secondary schools to study the social and historical impact of people with disabilities in other intersectional communities. Outcomes to this legislation would lay pivotal groundwork to destigmatizing disabilities and identifying demographics and common needs and wants across intersectional communities. It would integrate peer groups, build friendships, reduce isolationism, and emphasize the racial and cultural diversity of the disability community. For example, the deaf and blind communities. It would also peel back layers of prejudice ingrained in certain intersectional communities. If you have any questions about this legislation, please reach out to Rep. Ortiz and I. We're working on this together to drive this to success. Thank you so much.
All right. Let's close out here. Thanks, Sam. Next up, we have Christina, who's going to talk about pain management bill. Do you want to hold it?
Good afternoon. Can you hear me? Hi. Can you hear me now? Okay. Good afternoon. My name is Christina Johnson, and the reason I'm here is because people with chronic pain are having a really tough time. Some of you may have heard about some guidelines the CDC put into effect in 2016. I see some heads nodding, so that's great that some of you are aware of this. What it's done is it was supposed to be a guideline, but instead it's become sort of an unwritten mandate. And by that, I mean the way people portray people who use opioids is implying that they're drug seekers, that they're not part of our society, that they're not important. That kind of marginalization goes on a lot. Now, on top of that, most of us, I should say, are having our pain meds titrated down at a pretty rapid rate. Most people are, the CDC usually says nobody should titrate down, which means reduce the amount of medication that somebody's taking that are opioids past 15, 20%. I was given 30% drop off, and it still is a difficult thing. A lot of pain doctors are leaving the practice of pain, partly because they're afraid they're going to have visits from the DEA, CDC, FDA, that type of thing. It's been real harassment. It's been, I think, probably motivated by profit for someone, probably the people that benefit from the drug they want to use to replace opioids would be my guess. Anyway, people in chronic pain are having a hard time. Some people have chosen suicide. A lot of people who've had their opioids reduced turn to what is available on the black market because that's the only thing they can find for relief. It's tragic, but what's happening is people are dying and we need to do something. So we have a work group that's been working diligently for 2 years now on a bill. We have a sponsor in the Senate, which is Senator Joanne Janal from Fort Collins. And the bill has basically 4 sections. The first section would say that they're going to remove this threshold that's been created from 90 to 120 MMEs. And MMEs is a measurement of opioid strength based on the dosage and the time, how much they're taking and so forth. It's a little formula that doctors can figure out. And that's been why a lot of doctors are kind of giving up on wanting to be in pain specialists at this point because of, like I said, the harassment. The second point of the bill, which we think is important, gives protection to doctors, other hospital professionals, nurse assistants, nurses, and so forth, from if they have a patient that needs a higher dose of pain medication. What's that like? The third part of the bill offers protections to patients because people with intractable pain get dumped. Intractable pain refers to people whose conditions don't have a solution or the solution is so horrific that they really don't want to go through it. Those are the people that are really suffering, I believe. The fourth thing the bill would do is increase the education that doctors get in medical school in the understanding of pain, which is very complex. I was told it's 11 hours, and that, I think anybody here can say that that's not adequate. Pain is way too complex, and people's pain is very different. You can't impose a standard. It's not one size fits all. So those are the 4 parts of the bill. I'm sure we'll have some people that were very opposed, or excuse me, that were in favor of the bill on fentanyl last year, that maybe some of you remember. It was a bill that increased the penalties and the type of offense it was for people in that situation. So those are the 4 points. If any of you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them, or you can talk to me after our event is done today. Thank you for your time.
All right, next we've got So Kids Can Move with Angela Montgomery.
Thank you. So my name is Angela Montgomery. I am a mother, a prosthetist, and the president of the Rocky Mountain Orthotic and Prosthetic Coalition. We have a group of us here today that are trying to propose a late bill to get sponsored by Representative Ortiz. And I have Jordan Simpson, who's going to be virtually joining us. Jordan is a resident of Colorado. She is a social worker here and a person living with limb loss and limb difference. She's going to speak about our bill.
Hello, can everyone see me? I can't tell.
Yes, we can see you.
Thank you. Hello, Representative Ortiz and everyone in attendance today. Thank you so much for taking time to join us and for all the work you've done to support disability rights. People like me, Owen and Braden, standing in front of you today, there they are, who have limb differences or amputations, face challenges in accessing physical activity. Like any other kid, I wanted to move, play sports, and run around with my friends, but my everyday prosthetic just wasn't working. I would go to kick a ball, and my leg would sail across the field, but the ball would go nowhere. With its fixed ankle, I felt like I was running on a brick. I was told by insurance companies for most of my childhood, it wasn't medically necessary for me to be able to run and access a running leg, as it's outside of activities of daily living, which is the standard used for coverage. The first time I was able to run comfortably, I was 13 years old. And even then I had to swap feet onto one socket as insurance would only cover part of the blade, which created alignment issues as I stripped countless screws. Owen and Braden have also faced very similar challenges. Braden struggles to keep up with other kids. Owen's mother works to save $12,000 a year to pay for Owen's prosthetics so that he can participate in activities he cares about. She worries about his mental health and his self-image. These are burdens that no family should have to face. Health insurance should not limit one's full participation in life. Life is more than bathing, dressing, and eating as ADLs prescribe. Recreational devices are essential long-term cost-saving measures to ensure greater health and well-being for people with limb differences. How can we address this issue here in Colorado? We can pass legislation like So Kids Can Move, inspired by my work, on bipartisan bill LD 1003 with Representative Madigan in Maine. The So Kids Can Move initiative surpasses Maine's bill to require insurance companies to cover a second orthotic or prosthetic device for physical activity for those under the age of 26. Maine's study showed that it had a minimal impact on insurance premiums of only 1 to 12 cents per patient per month, but it will impact approximately 332 youth. There's a whole team of individuals dedicated to working on this issue, and we've brought fact sheets for you to start learning more today about the immense impact this bill can make here in our state of Colorado. All you have to do is join us in doing what's right, helping kids meet their basic needs, helping them to move. Please sponsor So Kids Can Move as a late bill. Thank you.
Yeah. If you had difficulty hearing that, please come up and talk to me afterwards. I can reiterate what we're talking about here. Oh, okay. Just essentially the bill is trying to cover a secondary orthosis or prosthesis for children or people under the age of 26 to be physically active in the outdoors. Right now, our insurance companies consider that to be medically unnecessary, and we're trying to change that.
All right. Next up, we're going to invite Rep-elect Junie Joseph to speak to her eviction protections.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to be here with all of you. And I am Rep-elect Junie Joseph from Boulder, House District 10. And I look forward to getting to know you. I'm brand new. There's a lot to learn, but I look forward to as well collaborate with you all. So basically, the bill is an eviction protection for Coloradans who receive SSDI and 10th assistance. So Coloradans who use cash assistance to pay rent sometimes experience delays in their payment through no fault of their own. A delay may impact their ability to pay rent and put them at risk of eviction. Also, Coloradans with disabilities may face unique challenges to finding stable housing because not all housing in Colorado is fully accessible. For example, a person who uses a wheelchair will not be able to live in a third-floor apartment accessible only by stairs. I actually currently live in an apartment you can only access through stairs. So the proposed solution would be the bill would require mediation prior to a landlord seeking judicial relief. So it would mandate mediation. And also part of the bill would require if mediation is not successful, is that once the parties go to court, is that the court will extend from the current 10 days to 30 days. Because right now people only have 10 days, and knowing that if you are a person living with disabilities, it's very hard for you to find accessible housing. So again, this is an opportunity to protect our community members who are living with disabilities. Thank you so much, and I look forward to having your questions later on and also communicating more with you on this particular issue. Thank you.
All right, next up we have Rep. Barb McLachlan, who is online, and she's going to be speaking to lawsuits around accessibility.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Representative Ortiz, my friend. Yeah, this bill is, it's one of those you go, why didn't they know this? Back in 1990, people had to have accessible parking spots. And apparently some people don't know about this yet. In Durango, we had somebody drive through, never got out of the car, never went into the business, so was never hurt. But he went by all the private parking lots of businesses and filed a lawsuit against people who did not have accessible parking spots. And he was, even though people, they took a couple days, some people took less than 24 hours and put the painting in and did the lot and said they didn't know. And he said he really didn't care if they put the parking spots in. He just wanted the money. So he was charging everybody $10,000. He was asking for up to $100,000, even if the repairs weren't made. So this bill is mostly to address the predatory aspect of all this. I have not even started writing a bill. I've only talked with Rep. Ortiz once about this. But I would like to have a bill that, first of all, puts into every business license, whatever it takes that they have to renew every year, to say you have to have accessible parking for your private business. It's not a matter of, I didn't know. There's no reason to say they didn't know that this was mandated. And also when they do have that, to give them some kind of time period to get the painting, to get all that done, and to put those parking spots in. And also that once they've met that standard and met the deadline, the lawsuit is over. You can't keep charging them. Several people in Durango ended up paying this guy $10,000 because small businesses couldn't represent themselves in court, apparently. And so they were forced to either go to a lawyer or pay the bill. And many of them just paid the bill. So this guy came off with several people paying him $10,000. Nobody can find him. It's happened all over the United States, apparently. So this is just kind of to get rid of some predatory bad doers in our system, and also increase the amount of handicap parking for everyone at every private business in town. So that's it.
All right, thank you, Rep. McLachlan. I know you can't hear the whispers in here, but this is a huge problem, and community is excited to work with you on this. All right, next up is also someone joining us online. It's going to be Rep-elect Velasco, and she's going to bring forward and discuss her affordable housing bill.
Hi, thank you so much. I'm Elizabeth Velasco. I represent House District 57. I am in rural Colorado in the Western Slope. And, you know, our working families have been feeling the pressure of everything being more expensive. Here in rural Colorado, we know that housing is a huge issue, as it is across the state. So one of my bill ideas is to increase the percentage of affordable housing units per new development project. And chatting with Representative Ortiz, he elevated the need for wheelchair accessible affordable housing, which is so important. So this is an idea that I'm working on and look forward to working together with our disability community or rural community and Rep. Ortiz to fine tune and bring onto the legislature. And also I'm a wildland firefighter, a public information officer, and I saw the need for inclusive emergency alerts. And, you know, part of my bill, one is adding language access to emergency communications, because when there's a fire and we need to evacuate, you know, this is life or death information that everyone in our communities needs to have and to know. And also making sure that we are leaving voicemails for people who, you know, here in our rural community, we don't all have access to internet. We don't all have access to a smartphone. And also for people who are visually impaired, to make sure that they get access to emergency information that they can use. So yeah, those are my two bill ideas. I'm working on them and definitely look forward to working together.
Thank you, Rep-elect Velasco. Next up, we've got Emma Bliesener, who's going to speak to fair and family-friendly restroom.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. It's good to be here and share space with you all. My name is Emma Bliesener, and I represent Out Boulder County. They're an LGBTQ organization up in Boulder, and Representative McCormick, who is running the bill for us, wasn't able to be here today. So she asked me to come and talk to you all about a bill we're running called Fair and Family-Friendly Restrooms. So the bill idea originally came from a constituent of Representative McCormick, who is a young father who was not able to change his child's diaper because there are not changing tables in most of our men's restrooms or the gender neutral restrooms. So Representative McCormick approached us at Out Boulder County, and we thought, how can we broaden this bill? Because we know using the restroom is a necessity. It shouldn't be a privilege to only some people. So we know for folks in the LGBTQ community, if they're not able to access a restroom that is true to their gender identity, it can be really dangerous for them, right? We know for folks in the disability community, not being able to access a restroom with a caregiver who might be of a different gender prevents you from using that restroom. So we are running the bill. It would only address government buildings right now, so state, county, and municipal buildings. It would require that any single stall restrooms update their sign to be gender neutral, meaning anyone would be able to access that. And the pictogram used to show that there is a restroom there needs to be void of any gender and show what amenities are available. If it's a changing table, it needs to have that void of gender because all people use the restroom, all people change diapers. Then for buildings that are new buildings or who are going through substantial renovations, the bill would require that a non-gendered single stall restroom be available on every floor where there are other restrooms available. So providing that option for folks in the disability community and the LGBTQ community. It would also then require that changing tables are put into all restrooms, both in gendered and non-gendered restrooms in government buildings, and that government buildings would be able to look towards a multi-stall, non-gendered restroom option. There are many states across the country who have implemented this. Boulder has done and is moving to do this. It's allowable in building codes. So if you're interested in learning more, I have some fact sheets and I'm happy to connect. Thanks so much for your time.
All right, we are actually now joined in person by Rep-elect Javier Mabrey, who's going to speak to his housing bill that he's going to be bringing forward. So, yeah.
Thanks, Rep. Ortiz. Thank you for organizing this, and to folks from the Cross Disability Coalition for organizing this. This is critical, and so many of us are pumped to have David in our class to continue raising these issues. I always really appreciate your advocacy in this space, and I'm super excited to work with you on a piece of legislation that will protect people with disabilities during the eviction and the foreclosure process. As I am sure many in this room know, the ADA provides protections for people with disabilities who are facing issues with housing. We've actually codified a lot of those protections into Colorado law. I realize now that I didn't introduce myself. I represent Southwest Denver. I just got elected to represent Southwest Denver House District 1. And my day job, I am an eviction defense attorney. I work at a nonprofit called the COVID-19 Eviction Defense Project. And we're representing tenants in court who are facing eviction, discrimination from their landlords, et cetera. And an issue that we keep running into is a tenant will be being evicted. The tenant will have a disability. I had a case that I worked on earlier this year where one of the tenants in a household was a 77-year-old blind woman. And we made a reasonable accommodation request under the ADA saying, give this family 6 months to move. You know, if they're evicted within 3 weeks, she could die. They're going to be homeless, and this woman could die. And the landlord's attorneys denied our reasonable accommodation request. We brought it up at trial, and we said, hey, can we continue this trial? Asked the judge, we filed a motion to continue, and we said, we made a reasonable accommodation request under the Americans with Disability Act and under Colorado law, asking them to give us more time. And the 1 minute left. Okay, so the opponent, the landlord said, well, that's a protection under federal law. It doesn't apply in Colorado eviction court. And the judge agreed and moved forward with the eviction process. And so we need to codify this protection specifically in Colorado's eviction statutes. It needs to be explicit that courts have the authority to continue cases and to delay the eviction or the foreclosure removal process when we can demonstrate that there is a nexus between a disability that somebody has and the relief that we are requesting. And so David and I are going to bring a bill on that this year.
All right, appreciate that, Rep-elect Javier Mabrey. Can we get Clayton Wire up to speak about the POWR bill? Everyone welcome him.
Thank you to Rep Ortiz and everyone else for being here. I really appreciate it. My name is Clayton Wire. I'm with the Colorado Plaintiffs Employment Lawyers Association. We, in conjunction with several lawmakers here in the state capitol, have been advocating for and bringing the POWR Act for the past couple of years. The POWR Act really has two main purposes. It is intended to remove the severe or pervasive requirement for harassment claims against Colorado employers. And it's also intended to place restrictions on the use of non-disclosure agreements to hide harassers' conduct in Colorado. These are two really important issues, especially for victims of civil rights violations in the state of Colorado. The severe pervasive requirement, which is currently a requirement for bringing any sort of harassment claim based upon workplace hostile work environment, things like that. You know, what we find is a lot of folks who, when they finally get employment, they get into an employment situation where the workplace may be so hostile that it's not appropriate for them to stay, and they simply can't become productive in that environment. And so what our hope is that by removing the severe pervasive requirement, we're going to allow individuals to more effectively enforce their civil rights. The severe pervasive requirement, very similar to qualified immunity, was a requirement created by federal courts under federal law that has now been transposed onto Colorado law that's different. And so what we're looking at is really, again, just like qualified immunity, a hurdle that has been placed in the way of victims of harassment for enforcing their civil rights. And so POWR Act would do away with that standard. It would keep both the subjective and objective standards for offensiveness, meaning that individuals would still have to show that they suffered some offensive remark or work environment, and that work environment was so objectively hostile that they could no longer stay there. Then there's a second piece to the bill which would restrict the ability of harassers and employers to use non-disclosure agreements, confidentiality agreements, to essentially hide harassers' conduct. You know, we have recently seen Harvey Weinstein was recently in the news again. You know, a lot of this bill has grown out of the Me Too movement. And what we've really done is extended those protections that have come out of the Me Too movement, making it more effective for individuals to bring harassment claims, disincentivizing the use of NDAs. And we've extended those to all employers in the state of Colorado, is essentially what this bill would do. And so our focus, our hope is that this bill will extend protections and make it easier for all individuals, all employees in the state of Colorado to enforce their civil rights. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Clay. All right, next up we've got Maureen Welch, who's going to speak to the definition of at-risk adults.
Thank you. My name is Maureen Welch, and I have an organization called Navigating Disability Colorado, primarily working around intellectual developmental disability issues. And I started working on this issue back in 2016 when there was a bill that changed the at-risk definition to include people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, which basically kind of puts a category on them based on disability of their functioning, which I opposed in committee, but our now treasurer, Dave Young, got it through. So since then, I've been following this issue and realized that my calls started coming in as I started to write on my blog about this. in that there was a lot of overreach of adult protective services. And then there's also emergency guardianship proceedings that can happen in court with just the testimony of one particular DHS employee from the county, and they can strip that person of all their civil rights without talking to anybody, and this is just wrong on every level. In fact, Meg accompanied me back, Representative Froelich, excuse me, she accompanied me to court to see this in action, and they actually kicked us out of the courtroom. There's no oversight of the judicial process either to know whether these judges are really equitably applying all of these things. So that's a real concern. It's a very complex issue. I ran a couple bills. One of them passed regarding trying to address that emergency guardianship process. But then we have APS, which is a county implemented state supervised program. We have Colorado Department of Human Services, and then we have the judicial branch. This is a very complex issue, and I think that at the end of the day, I realized we really need to get all the stakeholders together, including those from the Bar Association, and also sit down and work this out, come up with a plan to look at the system. We have supported decision-making in our statute now, and we need to look at that as an option to guardianship and make sure that the judicial system is looking at every person, like my son, as someone who should live a full, active life in the community and not feel like he has a target on his back because he has Down syndrome and autism, because he's riding the bus independently to his workplace. I want him to be able to do that and not, like Julie Reskin mentioned, worry about seeing social services or adult protective services, coming and investigating the parents because they were neglecting by letting this person live the fullest, richest life they can in the community. So it's really important that we look at this cohesively, include all the stakeholders. So I'm proposing a blue ribbon commission where we would get everyone together and come up with a plan and implement it step by step so we can get from the old way to the new way, which is very different, and it's going to take a lot to get all these different governmental agencies together. So I'd like to propose that, and I'm looking for bill sponsors. So come talk to me. Thank you so much.
All right, the next presenters are online, but we do have a couple representatives in person. I just want to recognize them from the DIA airport. So if you would stand to raise your hand so people can see you, and if they want to come up and talk to you and ask you questions after the presentation. So we've got Carol Reagan and Sarah Scott online that are going to give the DIA presentation.
Sarah, are you starting?
Say again, we just cut the end of that.
Sorry, I'm sorry. Thank you so much, Representative Ortiz. We are thrilled to be here today. Our first very important update is we have added accessibility to our EDI plan. So it's now equity, diversity, inclusion, and accessibility. This is our Vision 100 guiding principle. This is part of our strategic plan, and this is something that we are so proud of because we want to make sure that DEN is as accessible as it absolutely can be for all of our customers, and for especially for our customers who experience disabilities. So we are very proud of that piece. Carol, do you want to talk about the next thing?
We're also, we currently have a companion care room with an adult size height adjustable changing table. And I'm sorry, my name is Carol Reagan, and I'm the ADA and Title VI administrator at DEN. We also have future plans to include 4 additional companion care rooms, pre-security on level 5 in the terminal area. And we also have plans to construct post-security companion care rooms with adult height adjustable changing tables as part of the concourse expansion project. The new companion care rooms will be phased out and should be completed, start in 2025 and be completed in 2028. We also have the new tactile pavement project going on, and that is at the recommendation of the National Federation for the Blind. And so that is truncated domes, which are detectable warning tiles for level 5 for white cane users that will be installed at passenger arrival. And we are currently in the design phase of the project and also surveying the current scene, but we will be coordinating with the National Federation for the Blind to work together to ensure that the design concerns are addressed before construction actually starts.
Thanks, Carol. And again, my name is, I didn't introduce myself either, Sarah Scott, Senior Director of Equity Engagement and Inclusion. We are really excited to share that we have Uber and Lyft ride updates. Uber and Lyft have launched accessible curbside pickup zones for passengers with disabilities. Their respective apps now have an option for passengers to select the accessible curbside pickup on the east and west side of level 5. Uber and Lyft have agreed to partner with wheelchair accessible vehicle operators for customers, and Den is currently working out the details of the new permit requirements. We are also in discussions with Uber and Lyft in assisting with connecting the companies with potential wave providers within the Denver metro area. And finally, Uber is a supporter of the Sunflower Hidden Disabilities Program that Den launched in May of this year.
And then one quick last update about our website. So we are currently soliciting bids from qualified vendors to meet the WCAG, or the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines 2.1 compliance requirements for the build out and also the maintenance of the Fly Denver website. So the new accessible website will be launched sometime in 2023.
All right, thank you both so much for presenting. Next up, we've got Josh Winkler from the Gov's office. He's going to discuss implementation of HB 21-1110. It was the bill that extended Title II of ADA into state law and then also mandated web access. So, Josh.
I think I got it. I'll do it like rapper style. Hey, everybody, can you hear me? Full stuff. Okay, hopefully you can hear me now. Say, Ray, I'm Josh Winkler. I know a lot of the folks in the room from my previous life in the advocacy world. I'm now the Disability Policy Advisor in the Lieutenant Governor's office with a dotted line to the Governor's policy team. And so I'm here today to talk about some lessons we've learned about implementing House Bill 21-1110. You know, as you go to implement a bill, you learn a lot that you wish you would have known when the bill was run. And so we're hoping to do a cleanup bill this year to fix a couple little details. You know, and the biggest thing here is, we went too many slides. So you know, the biggest thing we run into is like, what is the definition of accessibility? And it means different things, you know, to different people. And that bill was intentionally very broad. And, you know, a lot of focus has gone to, you know, the WCAG guidelines. A lot of those were just mentioned by DIA are really focused on visual access. But there's a lot of aspects beyond that to accessibility. And so we want to run a bill that will do a little bit of cleanup that will allow OIT to write rules. So there actually be clarification within the rules of what accessibility means and how reasonable accommodations are applied. Because, you know, no matter what you do for accessibility, there's always going to be that outlier case where somebody needs specific accommodations. And the other thing I was just going to mention on that is, and this is in the governor's budget request letter, there is still a budget request coming. So just stay tuned for that. We can't really talk about that till January 3rd when it comes out, but there's more investment going into this. One of the things I did want to mention that we really have ramped up this program since in 2021, when that bill was run, there was one person at OIT working on tech accessibility. Now there's 7 people, full-time jobs working on tech accessibility. And there's, you know, this bill also applies to state and local governments and all the local municipalities and school districts. And so there's a lot of layers to what that accessibility means in each one of those environments. So still a lot of details to be worked out for the legislation, and then there'll be even more to be worked out in rules. But looking forward to working with the community on that. So thanks, good to see everybody.
All right, next up we have the esteemed Representative Meg Froelich, who's going to be discussing the implementation of 21-1122.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Rep Ortiz. Truly transformational leadership. Literally changed the building we work in. I'm going to get verklempt. Thank you, and thank you for the partnership with, with all the folks in the room. One example of that partnership was the creation of a commission to work on law enforcement interactions of individuals with disabilities. And most of my colleagues know I spend most of the off time in the legislature writing a comedic opera informed by our workings under the dome. The first song is, would you like to make your bill a study? And the second one is, would you like to form a task force or a commission? And so I'm tremendously grateful some of the folks are in the room that served on this commission to elevate really pervasive issues around policing and folks with disabilities. The challenge is, now what? So there was a report issued, there was some conversation, but there was no implementation. So this year we will seek to implement some of the suggestions, and that'll be a harder and more difficult bill than forming the commission was. So that's that, and I'm again very grateful for the ongoing work, a lot of which has been mentioned in bills that have been passed. I love the nothing about us without us, and that also has been transformational. I think that is now ingrained in the way we do business. And in addition to advocating for the bills that have been mentioned, continuing to de-silo the work we do so that every single thing we're doing involves conversations with folks from all different communities, including, of course, disability community. And that's actually one of the great things that Rep. Ortiz brings to our work. So thank you.
All right. That concludes representatives presenting on bills they're bringing forward. We do have one presentation, but we're going to talk budget first. And I'm going to briefly frame this by saying when COVID first hit and we thought we were going to have a deficit when it came to our budget, whose programs do you think were first in the chopping block? It's ours. So, and this isn't, again, to bring up any bitterness or bad blood. We ended up, not having a deficit and being able to expand programs, as Josh mentioned. We're talking about, making sure online was accessible. But we are honored to be joined by Representative Shannon Byrd, Chair of JBC on the House side, who's going to speak to the ways to get involved and how to advocate for the programs that we need. What's the best way to approach legislators in order to fight for the things we care about? So.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me, Representative Ortiz, and how exciting to be part of this conference. Colorado's budget is huge. We, just as of 2022, our budget totaled $13.2 billion. So this is our source of funding for everything we care about and everything we expect state government to do and to deliver upon. Just to give you a little more framing, I know there are certain things that every one of you in this room is very excited about and care passionately about, but every person in our state counts upon Colorado to allocate its resources wisely and really consistently with the values of the people of Colorado. So Representative Ortiz, I know that there is a slide deck that accompanies my presentation. I'm happy to speak without it, but some of the details might be helpful for people following along. And
Rep. Byrd, we do have it up, and the timeline is currently up right now. It might not be showing on your screen, but we have it up.
Oh, perfect. Okay, so we will start with the budget timeline. So you'll see here that this just kind of gives an outline of the process. We've got a very tightly controlled process that begins early in November. So I've been here with my colleagues on the Joint Budget Committee already since right after Election Day, as a matter of fact, hearing from budget analysts, people who actually work for the legislature, reporting out and describing what all of the various departments do in our state government and also what their spending requests are for the next year. So we've spent a lot of time hearing from all of the departments. After that, the governor makes his budget request to us. And that was an event with lots of fanfare where we went through and really looked at what the governor wanted to spend and how he sees Colorado investing as we take our state forward. So that's, again, always a big event, but what we hear in that presentation really is the underpinning is hundreds of hours of other committee work that happens to really explain and flesh out all of his asks. So after he does that, we start hearing from the heads of all of the departments, explaining all of the requests that form where they want to go and the work that they want to do that requires funding in the following fiscal year. We ask all kinds of questions. That's sort of our work right now, is digging in deep and really understanding whether the ways the governor has proposed to spend money are the right things to do with money. The next thing are these things called supplementals. So you can imagine we get one budget request each year where each of the departments thinks they know about how much money they want to spend, but that, it's always an estimate. And towards the end of the year, adjustments are made. These adjustments come in the form of supplemental requests. So we vote as a committee on those requests initially, then they go to our colleagues on the floor, and then the General Assembly votes on these things more widely. I'll pick up the pace here because this part isn't really very interesting, but this is kind of the nuts and bolts of the work that we do. The next piece is figure setting. This is the painstaking line by line work that we do, voting up or down on every single request. So each department might have, as few as 2 budget requests to as many as maybe 20 budget requests. And we go up or down on each one of these requests. Again, that's the substance that forms a document called the long bill. That long bill then, after the JBC votes on it, goes out to the General Assembly. And once that's passed, that is our budget. And just for a primer and reminder for everybody, every year by Constitution, we have a responsibility to pass a balanced budget. So if we have lots of money, we're able to spend what Tabor allows. But if we don't have much money, that's when, as Rep. Ortiz was mentioning, cuts have to happen. And every time that has happened, I know even as a citizen, every one of us suffers and feels something that we really care about gets cut. And we look forward to better economic times to restore those cuts. Today, we just had the December economic forecast, which is really looking out into the future and helping us understand how much money state government can expect to receive in its state coffers. And we try to align all of the budget requests we have from the governor to what we expect we'll be receiving, right? Will we have enough money to fund what he's requested? Will we have more than enough to fund what he has requested? So that's kind of where we're at right now. Briefings and hearings, I think we covered lots of what's on these other slides, but yeah, I think I've run through most all of this. So your best bet to be heard and to make sure you understand what's going on with your budget, because this is the people's budget. We are all elected here to make sure that your voice is heard and that the budget document reflects your values. My first advice to you is to stay close to your representatives. Make sure that the people who represent you understand your values. The next, if you want to be the most effective advocate possible, make sure you understand the agency or agencies, plural, that best serve the things that you care about. So whether it's HICPUF, the Healthcare Policy and Finance Agency, maybe you really care about education, whatever it is, make sure you understand that department. And a really good way for you to understand that department is to start first with the JBC analyst's written report, which will dive down and go to bedrock on every single thing that these agencies do and analyze how they spend their money, how they operate. Once you understand that and understand where they are spending money, that's where you can really play a strong role in terms of making recommendations and proposing real change. So I hope that helps. That's kind of a sum and substance. If there's questions, I'm happy to take those offline. And I don't know if there's a chat or a way to share out contact information, but I am always also happy to remain a resource for this group.
Representative Byrd, thank you so much for that presentation.
You're welcome.
All right. Before we go into open question and answer, I'm actually going to invite Shirl and her team up here to do one more bill presentation or discussion, and then we're going to open up the floor for questions, comments, feedback. So, and Rep-elect Parenti is going to speak to it first.
Thank you, Representative Ortiz. My name is Jennifer Parenti. I'm one of the new representative elects. I represent
East Boulder County and parts of Southwest Weld. And I just wanted to say a couple of words for introduction for my good friend Shirl. You know, about a year ago, my children and I sat in our back porch and watched a neighboring community destroyed by the Marshall Fire. We watched the flames from the back of our house and wondered if we were next. And so I was very proud and honored to be approached by my good friend and district neighbor, Shirl Garcia, to talk about putting forward a bill that I'm going to support as soon as we've got it fleshed out regarding how we can make emergency planning and management more inclusive of the community of those with disabilities. She's going to be accompanied today by her Shirl interpreter, Gil, her husband, Gil. They're going to talk about the bill that they have proposed. Thank you.
Hi, this is fabulous. I've got this. And Shirl wants me to read something for you, so she's prepared this ahead of time before she breaks into her own stuff. My name is Shirl Garcia. I am speech impaired, so I will speak slower than normal. So per the ADA, I get time and a half. So buckle up. Oh, Mr. Timekeeper. Anyway, to give a little background, I serve on a number of emergency preparedness advisory committees, from the Department of Homeland Security's Access and Functional Needs to serving as the chair of the State 911 Equal Access. I would like to give a brief overview of what could be a potential Colorado bill, emergency planning inclusive of the whole community. I would welcome an opportunity to come back with a team of subject matter experts on this topic from the State Department of Homeland Security Access and Functional Needs team. I am not their spokesman, but I'm here. California has set the bar regarding inclusion in emergency planning for the whole community. They have passed 3 bills they use for the California Emergency Operations Plan. They are AB 477, Chapter 218, AB 2311, Chapter 520, and Senate Bill 160, Chapter 401. AB 477 is the primary one, although all 3 are required by the state of California. I just finished helping one of the counties rewrite their emergency operating plan. Yeah. If I can interject, most of it is still proprietary, so she can't really go into details on that because they haven't really put it out yet. So don't ask. Let's see, while the Colorado DHSEM is setting the standard to include the whole community in emergency planning with not planning for the record, I am not their spokesman. I am engaged in their process. Okay. Colorado has a population of over 500,000 people with some form of disability per the 2010 census. The baby boomers are living longer. An emergency planner, there's So there is no one size fits all, she said. And so my focus today is on AB 477. It reads, we are proposing a bill that will create a law within the Office of the Governor, the Office of Emergency Services, which is responsible for addressing natural, technological, or man-made disasters and emergencies, including responsibility for activities necessary to prevent, respond to, recover from, and mitigate the effects of emergencies and disasters to people and property. Wow, that's quite a sentence there. Yeah. Existing law authorizes cities and counties to create disaster councils, by ordinance to develop plans for meeting any condition constituting a local emergency or state of emergency, including but not limited to earthquakes, natural or man-made disasters specific to that jurisdiction. Okay. So this is just the abstract to that. Okay. Because this bill would impose new duties on local governments, it would impose a state-mandated local program. Okay. Oh, okay, okay. And so also, do what? Okay. What else do you want me to say? Okay. Non-discrimination principles of the law. Main content, you want me to read that? Okay. Federal civil laws rights in Section 6 of this guide require equal access for and prohibit discrimination against people with disabilities in all aspects of emergency planning, response, and recovery. There are 10. So maybe I should just go through the titles. Okay, so one is self-determination. People with disabilities are most knowledgeable about their own needs. Okay. Yeah. 2, no one size fits all. 3, equal opportunity. 4, inclusion. 5, integration. 6, physical access. And 7, equal access. 8, effective communication. 8, it's communication. So communication is everything. So program modifications and no charge. So if you have if you have questions, you can see me after, or Jennifer. Shirl has all this in her head. She could go on for hours, but it's frustrating to her because she can't do it. So anyway, thank you very much. Thank you.
All right, thank you both so much. All right, at this time, we're going to open it up to the community. This is our chance now to speak as a community in this open forum with those online as well, to bring up any bill ideas, any questions you have for any of the presenters that were here. And my aide, Austin, is going to be taking the microphone around to everyone. So please introduce your name, introduce yourself, what organization you might be with, and then go ahead and ask your question or give your bill idea. Austin, go ahead.
Good afternoon. My name is Curtis Chong, and I'm with the National Federation of the Blind of Colorado. We have 3 issues, 2 of which I think are more in the line of advocacy, and we're concerned that we start looking at these. Number 1 issue has to do with many job applications today have a thing in there that says driver's license required. It's great if you drive. But if you're, or they ask you for your driver's license ID. But if you're a person who doesn't drive, which includes people who are blind, it means that you're now out of the running. So we're thinking we need a bill that says you can't put a driver's license requirement in a job posting unless the driving itself is an essential function of the job. Our second thing that we're interested in seeing what we can do about is accessible labels for prescriptions, which for many people are life and death issues. If you can't identify a medication that you're about to take, you might take the wrong one. And there are now technologies and things available, but here's the deal. You go to the pharmacy, you have a disability and you might want this, but the pharmacy doesn't reach out to you and say, hey, guess what, we have this. So we need a bill that will say they have to, number one, have an accessible option for labeling, and number two, they have to make that available to people. Number three is one which I think is unique. The Business Enterprise Program in Colorado is perhaps the most successful employment program for people who are blind. And that program's in bad shape right now. It needs more money. And that's probably a thing we want to take up with the JBC. So I thank you for your time and attention. Thank you.
Thank you, Curtis. All right, is there, okay.
One hand here.
Hello, I'm Wynn Wyman, acting as a volunteer, but I'm also, with my volunteer work, I'm with Loop Colorado. I would love to have hearing loops here in the state capitol, so I do not have to find, borrow, make sure the batteries work, so I have hearing access. I can just walk in, punch my hearing aid, and I have instant communication to all of the PA. Yes, I know it's a historical building, but you get a good loop installer and they can work with it. So that's number one. Number two is beyond the hearing loss, but it affects us greatly. So if I go to any public accommodation, I have no idea if they have an FM system, an infrared system, or a hearing loop. And I don't know what equipment I need to bring. And it's buried, if they even have it, on the website. And I would love to have a requirement that says every business has to have an accessibility tab on their website. And in there, it says, this is how we accommodate you. For the low vision, here's what we do. For the physical, here's what we do. For people who are deaf, hard of hearing, or deafblind, here's what we do. And then I don't have to call, I don't have to figure it out, I don't have to arrive so much earlier. That's my request.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ty Smith. I'm chair of the SILC, the Statewide Independent Living Council, as well as an employee of Atlantis Community, a Center for Independence Living. We at Atlantis came up with 4 areas around housing, which we feel is really important. Access, increased Section 501 access requirements, which I think Representative Ortiz is already addressing. Need for develop much more affordable, accessible, and integrated housing. Emergency shelters must be accessible and provide accommodations, and pass a Colorado visibility law ensuring homes are built with basic, simple accessibility standards. And I just want to say, you know, we shouldn't criminalize people with disabilities or the homeless. I know that that was happening in New York, and a lot of people turned out against it. I'd hate to follow in their footsteps. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you. For those who may not know me, my name is Shirl, and I am the new-ish home executive director of CCEC. I've been telling people, I've been on for about 6 months, and I've been telling people I get until the beginning of the next calendar year to say that I'm new. Thank you, everyone, for being here. I just wanted to raise a concern really quickly with the accessibility lawsuit, accessibility parking bill. I really appreciate the intention, and I know that small businesses, especially in the time of the pandemic, have been struggling. The Americans with Disabilities Act has been the law of the land for 32 years, and I would hate to give businesses a pass who are not complying with it. Also, historically, just as a background, I am not a practicing attorney, but I have a law degree. And back in the day, a million years ago, I worked for the P&A in Washington State. So I'm familiar with litigating ADA lawsuits. And historically, and continues to be the case, that bringing ADA-related lawsuits is incredibly difficult, and I believe that passing this bill would only make it more difficult and make it more difficult to enforce the rights of people with disabilities. And again, I completely understand the concern for small business, but I think it could set a really concerning precedent if it were to pass. So, thank you.
Hi. Thank you, everybody, for being here. My name is Francesca Mays, and I'm on the Pain Management Committee. And I just wanted to follow up with Christina, what she said, but you might be hearing the acronym illicit manufactured fentanyl. And the media has forgotten to leave out the word illicit. And it's not the fentanyl that you get from the doctor. So there needs to be some follow-up and some public service announcements regarding the distinction between fentanyl we're not getting from the doctors. This is illicit manufactured fentanyl. Thank you for your time.
Hello, my name is Jules. I and my son have been diagnosed with requirement for insulin in ADA protected disability type 1 diabetes just last year. I'm just here on behalf of my child. His birthday is in just 4 days, Christmas baby. And I completely support all of the bills that help parents with children that have disabilities, as well as anyone else who faces extreme discrimination within the courts from departments that have proceeded in inhumane ways without allowing any accommodations. I apologize for my demeanor as I just came from a court date and my child has still not been allowed a single phone call since June, and we haven't been allowed to eat together. And so I'm just bringing a poem that he wrote because we're better together. I just began a movement called Better Together since they've ripped us apart based solely on our physical disability and impairment and discrimination, violating CADA and ADA, American Discrimination Act, every week. And so please connect with me. I thank everyone and just are here with a message of support and peace. I appreciate everyone. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Julie Jennings. I'm a member of CCDC, but I'm here mostly on my own behalf. I have a question. I live in an apartment building that was built new in 2019, and the exterior doors and the doors to the amenity rooms inside are not ADA compliant. How does a building built new in 2019 get a certificate of occupancy when it is not compliant with the ADA?
Yeah, there's plenty that's not covered in federal ADA that we obviously need to be able to navigate in our community. So that's the whole purpose of the bill that I'm bringing forward. So Julie, we would love to have your input and love to work to make sure that we are making our housing situations truly accessible in every way. So thank you.
Okay, so two thoughts. First of all, I have a friend named Dory Babcock. Her son is in a youth detention center, and he's been for a couple of years. The courts have screwed up a number of the logistics, and even though he was supposed to get out several months ago, he is still stuck there. He is neurodivergent. His father has rejected a kidney, and they are trying to get him released, but the governor refuses to provide clemency. So that's something I would like to talk about with some of the representatives here, and hopefully we can help my friend get that for her son so he can give a kidney to his father. Second issue is when we talk about accessibility, we really don't talk about sensory input. For transportation issues like Denver International Airport, like RTD and public spaces, we don't talk about how much of an issue light pollution can cause for people with sensory issues like autistic people, smells and audio issues as well, to tuning into things like train announcements, for instance. So when we think about accessibility, we need to broaden our idea of what it means, including sensory input.
If I could just
Appreciate you
add,
bringing that up. We actually did discuss that with DIA, so we would love to have more of your input. They want to work on it. So that was specifically brought up, just to let you know.
and Representative Ortiz.
Yes. Go ahead, Sarah.
Oh, I didn't know if I was a panelist or not. If I could just add that this is something that we are looking toward. We have been actually looking at other airports and best practices in this area. As you all know, we are going through massive construction, but this is something that we're absolutely considering and understand how great the need is. So thank you for bringing that up.
And I would love to reach out to you to discuss this in more detail.
Wonderful.
They've been meeting regularly with our office, so we extend invites every time. Would love to see you there. All right.
Hi, my name's Allison Butler. I'm here pretty much on my own with my son, but I have spent a legal career working with the protection and advocacy. I currently work at the City and County of Denver at the Division of Disability Rights. But I wanted to mention, just because you brought it up, one thing that can be an issue when we're looking at having requirements for how many units have to be accessible or businesses needing to be accessible, the building codes are not always the same as the ADA compliance. So what can happen is that you get a certificate of occupancy or you get the permission to build, but it doesn't actually meet ADA compliance. So if any of these bills are being run, what I would urge is that you have a part in it that says it has to also go through ADA review in order to get the certificate of occupancy.
Thank you so much. All right, here in the back.
Hi, my name is Hannah Chowdhury, and I actually met Rep. David Ortiz after I had protested in my neighborhood, which is the Santa Fe Arts District. They had taken away parking, and there was no handicap parking. And so with my disability, I had gone to the group that took away the parking to extend the sidewalk. And when I was responded to, the woman responded to me and said, "I don't know why you're making such a complaint. You need to sit down." I responded, I'm already sitting. So they put in a handicap parking space, and I watched people struggle, and it was so shameful. It was like providing one of those other drinking fountains from our past horrible history. They just threw one in. I would see people struggle getting in and out of their wheelchairs into traffic. I came down and I saw Rep Ortiz, and I didn't know who he was. And I said, would you like to say something about this? I want to complain and say, and he goes, here's my card. And I was delighted. I also went to my building. My condition is getting worse. And I told them that they would need to provide me with a handicap parking space since the spot is owned by the HOA. They responded, you need to get a lawyer. So that's why I'm here. And throughout that district, I've been getting more and more of the people of the Santa Fe Arts District, not the businesses, together and getting more and more involved with ADA issues in that neighborhood. So I would like to, I've heard wonderful things, and I consider myself, since I'm 47, a historic institution. So thank you.
And I just want to put out there that there are several legislators working on education issues in terms of individuals with disabilities. So please come forward with that, because that's also thorny and complicated. But just know that there are folks in the building already working on it who want to continue to do that work. Sorry.
No, you're good. Hi, all. My name is Sammy Trout. I go by the he, him, his pronouns, and I'm a member of the Associated Students of Colorado State University, which is the student government at CSU. That's where I serve as a senator for the College of Liberal Arts, as well as the chair of the University Affairs Committee. As a student, I hear many stories of students who have professors who either ignore or outright go against student accommodation requests. Are there any initiatives that can be started at the state level to ensure professors of colleges and universities are held accountable to that?
So Sam's raising his hand over there, and I know why he's raising his hand is because we worked on this bill last year, and I'm sure he's got lots to say about it.
So Chase over there and I are on the committee, advisory committee for students with disabilities in higher education. We're going to be crafting reports coming up this next year and then in the future as well, making legislative recommendations to make adjustments on higher education to make it entirely more accessible. That is primarily some of the work David and I have done together, and we'll continue to push forward on.
I'd love for you guys to look out for sure. Yeah. Thanks, Sam.
Hi, thank you. My name is Amy Petray-Hill. I do volunteer with CCDC, but I'm here for myself. I teach mental health first aid with developmental pathways for parents and direct service providers who need access to emergency mental health sometimes for the people that they work with. I am so grateful for your bill, Representative, on working with police officers. But to complete this, I think we need our frontline crisis service folks educated in what is needed for people with IDD, because I think success would be being able to call our Colorado crisis line and getting those folks the help that they need so that we don't have to call police officers. So I would love to work with any representative or senator who's interested in completing what you are starting and just finishing it also on the Colorado Crisis Services line. Thank you.
We're going to do 2 more questions in person and check in with people online and continue the questions in person after that. So.
Hi, I'm Jen Iverson. I am an advocate in Douglas County School District. For lack of a better word, we're a mess in regards to kids with disabilities. we need some help. We have several CDE complaints that have been completed that that really shine a light on things that are going wrong. But because of local control, because of current board members, because of check a box, we just can't get movement. We need more teeth to the READ Act. We need more more identification of reading disabilities, just basic things to get our kids educated so that they can lead meaningful lives.
Thank you, Jen. All right, Julie, did you? Yep. And then we're going online for those online that have questions.
Yeah, the issue Amy brought up is very real about people with IDD not getting mental health services. It's a huge problem, and we did pass a bill last year, House Bill 221214, that said crisis services cannot deny people. The problem is it's not being enforced. So, so maybe we need to do a bill this year that has some fines or penalties, because just saying it apparently wasn't good enough. And there's been a couple times when we were getting these kind of roundabout excuses of like, well, this isn't in that contract, so it didn't count. The bill said crisis services, that's for everyone. It shouldn't matter who's in what contract or what way, or what whatever. So even though the bill was very, very clear, maybe we need some enforcement.
All right, do we have anyone online that has a question? We have 3 questions online. All right. Michael Avenatti, go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question.
Thank you, Representative Ortiz. My name is Michael Antonacci. I've been getting more involved with Colorado local politics this past year and reached out to my chronic illness community to ask for some bill ideas from them. And here's what we have. Not all of them are very fleshed out. One of them is off-label protection for rare diseases. And insurance sometimes will only approve treatments if they're FDA approved for that specific diagnosis. Off-label meaning it's approved for some other diagnosis that's related, and then the doctor's prescribing it for you. So if you have a rare disease, there is not going to be FDA approval because your disease isn't big enough to get into those trials. So that's the first idea. Second is for Medicare, Medicaid. Some people in the group are on that, and they are unable to get some newer medicines because Medicare hasn't gotten around to approving them yet, even though private insurance does cover it. And some drug companies will offer discounts, but if you're on Medicare or Medicaid, you're not allowed to get those discounts, which makes it very hard to get treatment. A third, there's 4, by the way. The third is mistreatment in the ER, doctors not believing you, especially if you're a female chronic pain patient. Those tend to not go well, might get accused of being drug seeking. I know that was mentioned earlier. Doctors not running tests. That's a not very fleshed out one. The fourth and final is if there's some medicines that if you stop them suddenly, it's very bad. And so if the pharmacy is closed, which I've had happen, there's a family emergency or weather, you can't just transfer a controlled substance to another branch. But if you stop it, it can be very dangerous. Doing something with that. Overall, thank you guys so much. This has been an amazing event, and I'm really glad that it happened.
Thank you, Mike. Next, we've got Megan Bowser. So if you would unmute yourself, introduce yourself, and either ask your question or give your bill idea.
Hi.
Yes, I'm so sorry. I'm using a screen reader here. So my apology for the delay. So my name is Mary Sanders. I'm an advocate for affordable housing, and I'm also a person with disabilities. And my question is regarding the 2023 housing legislation. In order for us to, for us to get involved, if we get in touch with Representative Ortiz's office, and by the way, thank you for everyone for putting this on, would we be able to get involved in giving feedback to the legislation before it's on the floor as a bill. And I'll make it very quick. I have other questions, but I will go ahead and table those. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. This is Rep Ortiz. So the sooner you get involved with my office, the easier it is for me to take that input and put it into legislation. Obviously, you know, it's going to be up to the committee it goes to, the chair of the committee when they want to calendar it, and then when it goes to the floor. But the sooner you get to my offices to work with us directly, the easier it'll be to get that input there. And even if we're at the 11th hour, I always sit ready to hear and take input. So it's never too late. Do you have any other questions to follow up with that, or was that the only one?
That was the only one pertaining to this topic. I have other questions, but I can email you offline. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. Terry Shirley, if you would please unmute yourself, introduce yourself, and ask your question or present your bill idea.
Okay. Hello, I am Terry Shirley, and I'm with the Hearing Loss Association of America, Boulder chapter. And I'm speaking for myself as a late deafened adult, and I do not rely on sign language. I lip read and I prefer captioning. And I have a couple of suggestions that I'd like to see the airlines text their travelers' telephones of all flight announcements, such as gate changes, delay status, where to go, which baggage claim to get your luggage, and even if they want to offer large sums of cash if you decide to get off the plane and take another flight. Sometimes they offer people more money, and I don't ever hear that unless somebody tells me that who's sitting next to me. And other things that are of concern are lack of captioning at live theaters, live major public events, healthcare, hospitals, clinics, pharmacies, doctor's appointments, town hall meetings. And we are working with Red Rocks Amphitheater because we would like to have their live shows captioned. And we are working with the movie theaters in Colorado for open captions at some theaters, some days, and some movies. But it's all voluntary at this time, and they could take it away from us at any time. Captions is also lack of hearing loops at all these above places. And captioning is inclusive for everyone, multiple disabilities, and fully abled people who would like to enjoy captions. Thank you for letting me have this time to speak.
Of course, at this time, I'm gonna pass it to Sarah, because I see she might have a response to that question.
Yeah, hi, thank you so much for your question. As you may or may not know at DEN, we are not responsible for the airlines, but we certainly have been in discussions with them about issues as it relates to accessibility. You know, as I mentioned when I introduced myself, we are now EDIA, Equity, Diversity, Inclusion, and Accessibility. And so we really want that for you too. And as I said, we have been in discussions with the airlines over many accessibility issues.
Yeah, and I just will follow up on that. That's why we had National PVA involved, because again, like on the state level, and they've been great partners, I can work with DIA, what they have responsibility for, but they can't touch the airlines, I can't touch the airlines, but our federal delegation can. And that's why we got to work through organizations like PVA, National, and others that advocate for us on the national stage. So we're coming up on time. I'm going to cut it off. It's going to go Megan, then Mary, not the esteemed Rep. Mary Young, and then we're going to anchor with the esteemed Rep. Mary Young, and we're going to close us out.
Hi, my name is Megan Bowser. I am a parent of 4, one of whom is deafblind, and then I also am a family navigator with Family Voices Colorado. And we have a bill we've been working on coming up that's called Concerning Services for Persons Who are Deafblind, or Concerning Intervener Services for Persons Who are Deafblind. Family Voices has been running a pilot over the last year and a half, providing community services for children who are deafblind. They can receive services currently within the school day, but once they got out of school and in their community, there were no deafblind specific services available to help these children, including my son, access their communities and be able to communicate within their communities. So the pilot is providing one-on-one services provided by an intervener who's a specially trained individual on deafblindness to these children to allow them to do things like go to the story time at the library, go to the parks and play with friends, go to their churches, their dance classes, activities such as this. So we're hoping to place this as a program within the state, so it's ongoing. Representative Mary Young is our sponsor for this bill, and we've also been working with Fafi Mendez as our lobbyist for this bill. We're very excited about the services that this could provide for our children ongoing and enable them to increase their independence within their communities. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next, I'm going to call up on Mary, not Rep. Mary Young. If you would unmute yourself and introduce yourself, ask your question, or present your bill. I'm going to give you one more shot here. I don't know if you have technical difficulties, but for time reason. We have you muted, so if you're speaking, we can't hear you. Okay, we're running over in interest of time. I'm going to go ahead and turn it up to Rep. Mary Young. She is going to be our final question or statement of the event before I close this out. If you didn't get to ask your question, please reach out to our offices and we will follow up with you.
Thank you, Rep. Ortiz, and thank you so much for organizing today. I had a parent eloquently describe the bill that we're doing on interveners. I'm so excited to be doing that. I'm also working with CCDC on a bill to address health and safety issues in some areas of housing for the disability community. I want to once again thank you, and let's continue this good work together.
All right, thank you, Rep. Young. Folks, I cannot thank you enough for attending today's event. I want to again give a special shout out to CCDC for providing lunch for us today. For all the electeds that showed up, for all the activists and community members, we exist to serve you. We exist to be your voice. Again, lived 30 years as a leg walker and didn't realize until after I became injured and became a part of this tribe how critical and important this tribe would become to me to fight for access. So stay involved, stay in touch. Feel free to reach out to me. Please reach out to your state rep or state senator too. And if they're not listening to you, I'll get them involved. Don't worry. Thank you so much. Feel free to network and have a good time.